All right, get this, folks. We're diving into some seriously wild stuff today. We're talking cyber attacks, but not just like, stealing your credit card number kind of stuff. We're talking real world chaos.
Yeah, bringing things to a halt.
Yeah, disrupting entire transportation systems, causing havoc at thousands of gas stations, like the stuff of movies.
It is.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, and we've got some incredible sources too, like news articles and in-depth cybersecurity analysis, all about a group called
Predatory Sparrow.
Predatory Sparrow.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating look at how cyber warfare is evolving, Like, we're not just going to explore what they did, but why they did it.
Exactly. It's like, what's the motive here?
Yeah.
What are the tactics? What does this all mean? And get this, they've specifically been targeting Iran.
It's a really focused campaign.
It's a story you might have caught glimpses of in the headlines, but we're gonna give you the deep dive, the unique perspective on this whole shadowy world.
Yeah, it's like peeling back the layers of a digital onion.
I love that analogy.
Love.
Okay, so let's rewind back to 2021. Picture yourself in Iran. You're about to catch a train.
You've got your ticket. You're ready to go.
Yeah, and suddenly every screen at the station, boom, flashes, canceled, or long delay due to cyber attack. But there's a twist.
Always a twist.
It's always a twist, right?
Right.
The hackers include the Supreme Leader's phone number in their message. Like, what? What do you make of that?
It's a bold move. Definitely a statement.
Yeah.
This incident was like Predatory Sparrow's grand entrance onto the world stage, They used this sophisticated malware called Meteor Express.
Meteor Express.
It basically fried the railway system's computers and caused, well, massive disruption.
So is this Meteor Express anything like the malware we all worry about? Like the kind that lurks in spam emails?
Not exactly. This one's a wiper malware.
Like windshield wipers?
Well, not quite. I mean, it wipes stuff, but like digitally. Its sole purpose is destruction, It destroys files, it locks users out of their machines, and to top it off, it wipes the master boot record. So, like, you know how the master boot record, like, tells your computer how to start?
Uh-huh.
It's like trying to start your car, but someone ripped out the ignition wires.
Okay, that's a whole other level of tech chaos. But hold on, the story gets even wilder, because a few months later, Predatory Sparrow strikes again, this time hitting over 4,000 gas stations across Iran.
Widespread, right.
Yeah, and it wasn't just taking down the pumps, it was specifically crippling the payment system for those fuel subsidy cards.
Right.
People couldn't get gas, lines stretched for days, like the whole country was on edge.
The thing is, the timing of this attack it's really interesting. It just so happened to coincide with the anniversary of these massive fuel subsidy riots in Iran.
Oh, wow.
Some analysts think this wasn't a coincidence, It's like maybe Predatory Sparrow was deliberately trying to stoke that unrest, tap into those existing tensions.
So they're not just tech savvy, but strategically minded too. That's a scary thought. But get this. Here's where things get even more complex, right?
Layered.
Yeah, the cybersecurity experts who analyzed the attack, they said that Predatory Sparrow actually held back.
Held back.
They could have inflicted way more permanent damage.
Wow.
Yeah, they even claimed they warned emergency services beforehand. It's like, what's going on here?
That's the thing. It raises all sorts of questions about their motives, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does restraint actually look like in this world of cyber warfare? And are these claims of ethical hacking, are they genuine or just a smokescreen?
These are the kinds of moral gray areas like we're gonna really unpack as we delve deeper. But before we get there, we got to talk about the incident that really put Predatory Sparrow on the map. The attack on the Kostan steel mill in 2022. We're not talking about just digital disruption here. We're talking molten steel spilling everywhere.
Shutter damage.
Fires erupting. It's like a scene straight out of Hollywood.
And, they didn't leave any doubt about who was responsible. Predatory Sparrow, they posted a screenshot of the steel mill's control software. Online, it's like, we were here kind of thing.
The ultimate bragging rights.
This control software, by the way, it's known as a human-machine interface, or HMI. It's essentially the central nervous system of the whole steel-making process.
So instead of just breaking in, they basically hijacked the whole operation.
Exactly. And the analysis suggests that they deliberately manipulated the HMI to override safety procedures, and that's what led to that dramatic release of molten steel. It's a chilling example of how a cyber attack can have very real, very physical consequences.
And then there's another layer to this too, right? They also release a bunch of stolen emails from the steel mills, it seems like they were trying to expose, like ties to the Iranian military. It's almost like they had a secondary objective information war.
Absolutely. They wanted to embarrass the Iranian government, maybe even sow discord within their ranks. But, their claim of wanting to protect innocent individuals, it doesn't really square with that video of workers fleeing for their lives as
Ah,
molten steel spews everywhere.
it's like they're playing both sides. They claim restraint while they're escalating their attacks. And then things get even more tangled in December 2023 when they hit those gas stations again. This time, though, it's against a backdrop of, rising tensions in the Middle East. We've got Iran-backed Houthi rebels causing trouble in Yemen, and then there's this group called cyberwarfare targeting water utilities in the region with anti-Israel messages. It's this whole mess of cyber and physical conflict.
And Predatory Sparrow jumps right into the fray with another bold attack.
Yeah.
It's like they're sending a message not just to Iran, but to anyone who might get in their way.
We can cripple your country and we're not afraid to do it kind of message.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely an attention getter.
It is. In the world of cyber warfare, this is what's called signaling.
Signaling, huh?
Yeah, you use attacks to send a clear message to your adversary.
Oh, I see.
And Predatory Sparrow, they seem to be mastering this art of signaling.
They do.
They're deliberately provoking a response. But the question is, what kind of response are they hoping for? And who else might be watching and learning from their tactics?
It's a great question, and it kind of leads us to some even deeper and, frankly, more troubling territory. Like, what are the ethics of this kind of cyber warfare? Is there even such a thing as a responsible cyber attack, especially when you consider the potential for civilian harm, even if it's unintentional?
These are the questions.
Right.
These are the questions that keep cybersecurity experts and policymakers up at night.
Absolutely.
The lines are blurring between, acceptable disruption and just outright aggression. And as technology keeps advancing, well, the potential for unintended consequences, it just grows.
Yeah, it's a complex ethical landscape for sure, and Predatory Sparrow is kind of forcing us to confront some very uncomfortable truths about the future of conflict. But before we jump into that minefield, let's just pause for a moment and take stock of what we've learned so far about Predatory Sparrow. Like, what are the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, their technical capabilities are undeniably impressive. Like, they've shown a deep understanding of critical infrastructure and how to exploit vulnerabilities. But what's even more striking to me is their strategic thinking. They're not just causing random chaos. They're choosing their targets carefully. They're timing their attacks for maximum impact, and they're using information warfare to amplify their message.
It's almost like they're playing this multi-dimensional chess game, like thinking several moves ahead.
Right.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
They've shown a willingness to escalate, but so far they've stopped short of causing like truly catastrophic damage. But for how long?
That's the million-dollar question, and the answer might depend on how their adversaries choose to respond.
Okay, so we've got this group with advanced capabilities, strategic motives, and a willingness to push the boundaries. But there's another layer to this story that we need to unpack. The ethical dimension. The fact that these attacks are happening in a very specific geopolitical context with real-world consequences that go far beyond just bits and bytes.
We can't just analyze Predatory Sparrow's actions in a vacuum.
Right.
We need to consider the broader implications, the potential for escalation, and the long-term impact on global stability.
And that's exactly what we're going to do next.
Buckle up.
Yeah,
This is where things get really interesting.
it's about to get real, folks.
So, we keep talking about these attacks, these digital weapons. Let's really get into the nuts and bolts here, the tech side of things. Remember that first attack on the railway system, the Meteor Express malware?
Yeah, the one that caused all those delays and cancellations.
It wasn't just your average computer virus. It was like a triple threat designed for maximum destruction.
threat?
Yeah, like first it went right for the core. It just destroyed the railway computer's file systems. Imagine all your important documents, photos, everything gone in an instant. That's essentially what happened to those computers. And then not only that, it also locked out all the users. So even if they had backups, they couldn't access their machines. And then, as if that wasn't enough, it wiped the master boot record.
Hold on, back up a sec. Master boot record, what is that exactly?
Well, think of it like the computer's instruction manual. It basically tells the computer how to start up. Without it, the computer's pretty much a brick.
So they bricked an entire railway system. That's nuts.
It's pretty sophisticated stuff. And then, we've got the gas station attacks. How do they manage to knock out the payment systems for those fuel subsidy cards, right?
Yeah, that was a mess.
Well, the full details of their methods, there's still a bit of a mystery, even to the cybersecurity experts. They're still piecing things together.
So they're that good.
It seems like they exploited vulnerabilities in the point-of-sale systems. Think of it like finding a weak spot in a building's security. Once you're in, well, you can do a lot of damage.
Makes sense. And you mentioned earlier that those attacks seemed carefully timed, like to coincide with the anniversary of those fuel subsidy riots.
Right, right.
It makes you wonder if they were, I don't know, trying to tap into existing tensions.
Oh, absolutely. They might have been aiming to create a sense of instability, that feeling that the government can't even provide basic services.
Which is,
Powerful,
yeah.
especially in a country, with a history of social unrest.
And then, of course, there's that steel mill attack, which, as we've said, was just a whole other beast.
Right. This wasn't just about, disrupting services. This was about causing actual physical damage.
Right, right.
And to pull that off, they needed to get into the heart of the steel mill's operation. And that's the human-machine interface, the HMI. It's basically the control panel for the entire steelmaking process.
Yeah.
So gaining access to the HMI, it's like seizing the controls of this giant, complex machine.
They basically took over, didn't they?
Exactly. But how do you even begin to hack something as complex as a steel mill? Right?
I mean, yeah, where do you even start?
Well, remember that screenshot they posted, their little "We were here" message?
Mm-hmm.
That was them, showing off their skills. They likely exploited what we call a zero-day vulnerability. It's basically a flaw in the system that no one knows about yet.
So no one, not even the people who designed it?
Nope, not even them. And those are incredibly valuable to hackers because they can bypass security measures and get into really sensitive systems.
So they found a secret back door into the steel mill's control system.
Exactly. And in this case, the control system they targeted, it was made by Siemens, a major industrial automation company. These systems, they're used in all sorts of critical infrastructure, power grids, water treatment plants, you name it. So the fact that Predatory Sparrow was able to compromise a Siemens system, well, it's kind of a big deal.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
And what's even more alarming, according to the analysis, is that they specifically manipulated the HMI to bypass these things called safety interlocks.
Safety interlock.
Yeah. They're designed to prevent exactly the kind of catastrophic event, like the uncontrolled release of all that molten steel.
Yeah.
But they bypassed them.
So it wasn't an accident. It was
Deliberate.
deliberate sabotage.
Yeah, and the fact that they recorded it, and released that video of the workers fleeing, it was a message, a warning about what they're capable of.
Right. Speaking of messages, what about those stolen emails? They released a whole bunch of internal communications from the steel mills, right?
Right.
It seemed like they were trying to expose those ties to the Iranian military.
Absolutely. This is what we call information warfare.
Huh.
They're not just disrupting operations or sabotaging things. They're trying to undermine the Iranian government's credibility, maybe even sow discord within their ranks.
So it's multi-pronged. They disrupt, they cause damage, and then they wage this information war.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, what is their end game?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are they trying to achieve? Are they just showing off, trying to cripple Iran's economy? Or do they have something even bigger in mind? We don't know.
And remember, all this is happening against this backdrop of, an already volatile region.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We've got the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine. You've got tensions with Iran. And this whole mix of state and non-state actors all kind of vying for power.
It's a powder keg.
Yeah, it is. And Predatory Sparrow seems to be, I don't know, inserting themselves right into the middle of this geopolitical chess game, using these cyber attacks as a way to kind of signal their strength, their resolve, and maybe even their willingness to escalate.
Exactly. And we talked about signaling earlier, right? It's basically a way of communicating with your adversary, but instead of words, you use actions.
Right, right.
And in this case, those actions are, pretty dramatic.
They're saying, look what we can do.
Yeah, we can disrupt your transportation, cripple your economy, even cause damage to your infrastructure. Yeah. So, don't mess with us.
It definitely gets your attention, but it also raises these big questions about, the rules of engagement in this new era of cyber warfare. Is there a limit to what's acceptable?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Where do you draw the line between just signaling an actual aggression?
Right.
It's blurry.
It is, and that's the problem. There's, no international treaty on cyber warfare, no agreed-upon set of rules. It's a bit of a Wild West out there.
The Wild West, huh?
Yeah, and Predatory Sparrow, they're pushing the boundaries. They're testing the limits. But the fact that they're claiming to exercise restraint, that they're warning emergency services before their attacks, That suggests that they're at least aware of, of the ethical implications.
They're trying to have it both ways, maybe?
Yeah, trying to be both a disruptive force and a responsible actor.
Which, I mean, is that even possible in cyber warfare?
That's a question we need to explore further, definitely.
All right, so we've seen how predatory sparrow is pushing the boundaries of what's, like, technically possible, but what about the moral implications? Is there even such a thing as a clean cyber war?
It's a question philosophers, ethicists, they've been debating this for years.
I bet.
And as these cyber attacks become more, sophisticated, more powerful, and more intertwined with everything that's happening in the real world,
Right.
well, those questions just become even more urgent.
So let's get into this. Let's explore these different perspectives, the potential risks, the challenges of navigating this whole landscape.
Buckle up again.
Yeah, it's going to be a bumpy ride. So we've talked a lot about how technically skilled this group is, predatory sparrow, and they're clearly not afraid to use those skills. But let's talk about the ethics of it all.
Right, the elephant in the room.
Yeah. They say they're being careful, even warning emergency services, but at the end of the day, they're still launching these attacks that could have real consequences.
It's true. It's tricky. Some experts, they argue that cyber attacks, in some ways, they're preferable to traditional warfare.
Yeah.
Like less physical destruction, and they can be more targeted.
I can see that point. No bombs, no bullets, just bits and bytes. But like we've seen, those bits and bytes can have real world impact. Like even those gas station attacks, the disruption, the economic fallout.
Yeah.
That's harm, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And then we have the steel mill. Even if no one was seriously injured, those workers like running for their lives while molten steel is spewing everywhere. I mean, it's
a powerful image. And it really brings those ethical questions into focus. Like, they claim they wanted to protect innocent individuals.
Right.
But even if we take them at their word, the fact that they were willing to risk, a major accident,
it's troubling.
It is. It's really troubling. It's like, are they really able to control the consequences of their actions?
Yeah. It's like they're walking this tightrope between sending a message and trying to show restraint.
And that kind of brings us back to this whole idea of signaling,
Right.
Predatory sparrow's approach, it's interesting because it's so overt. They're not hiding,
Well,
They're taking credit. They're explaining their motives. It's like they want everyone to know.
It's like they're saying, look what we can do.
Yeah, exactly. We can do this, but we're choosing not to for now. It's a power play, but it's also...
It's a message.
It is. It's a very deliberate message.
But is that really responsible behavior? Like in the cyber realm, is it setting some kind of dangerous precedent?
That's the debate, isn't it? Some people argue that this kind of signaling, it could actually be a deterrent. Like by showing what they can do, they're discouraging future attacks, But then others worry that it just makes these kinds of attacks more likely. It normalizes them, lowers the threshold for other actors to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a tough call. And it gets even more complicated when you consider the bigger picture, This isn't just some random group of hackers.
No, not at all.
They're operating in this very specific geopolitical landscape, all these long-standing conflicts, complex alliances.
Absolutely. And that makes it so much harder to figure out, like, what's the ethical implication of what they're doing? Does it even matter what their motive is? Are they acting out of some sense of, I don't know, national security, or are they just trying to get ahead?
Those are some really tough questions, and the fact that we're even asking them shows just how much things have changed. Cyber warfare isn't some theoretical threat anymore. It's real, it's happening, and we're all dealing with it, And these ethical dilemmas, they're only going to get more complex as technology keeps advancing.
Absolutely. It's uncharted territory. There's no rule book.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have these conversations, to explore different perspectives and try to figure out what are the boundaries of responsible behavior in this cyber world, like what's okay and what's not.
So where does that leave us? What should our listener be thinking about as they, try to navigate this whole complex landscape?
I think the key takeaway here is cyber warfare is here to stay. It's a powerful tool. It can be used for good or for bad. And the choices we make now, they're going to have a huge impact on the future of conflict. So we need to be aware of the risks. We need to understand what motivates these actors and be ready to have those tough conversations about ethics, about what the boundaries are in this new kind of warfare.
It's a call to action, really.
It is. And it's not just for policymakers or the cybersecurity experts.
Right.
It's for all of us. We all have a role to play in shaping what the digital world looks like, And that future, it's being written right now.
One line of code at a time.
Yeah, one line of code, one cyber attack, one ethical decision at a time.
Well said. It's definitely challenging, but it's also pretty fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
And the more we understand about it, well, the better equipped we'll be to face those challenges head on.
Couldn't agree more.
So on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the world of predatory sparrow. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little unsettling.
A little bit.
Because the truth is, the digital world and the real world, they're not separate anymore. They're intertwined in ways we're only beginning to grasp.
And that's the key, you
Yeah.
know, understanding those connections.
Absolutely. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
The future's in our hands.
It really is. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, happy diving.